All right, I wasn't keeping count on the time left, so I'm just going to assume we've already passed 10 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the PLU Office of Admissions Suit Up for Senior Year. This is a great webinar series for you to learn a little bit more about how to get ready for the college search process. And is particularly for this session, we're going to be going over the college essay portion. And just to begin with, I'm going to do some quick housekeeping things. Please make sure if you do have any questions as we're going along to use the Q&A function on the Zoom bar. So use the Q&A function if you do have any questions, and we will be addressing those questions at the end of the session. And then we'll also leave it up for more questions at the end as well too. So again, feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll be answering that at the end of this webinar as well. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Here's my name and title. My name is Brandon Bruan, and I'm the Director of Admission Operations. And just a quick introduction of myself so you know who I am. I've been in college admissions for going on 13 years now, and I work with students that are listed on this website, so mainly students from Hawaii. We do have folks who come from Hawaii on the webinar joining us, so aloha, thanks for joining us today. I work with transfer nursing students, international students. But just know that everyone here joining us on the webinar, you all have your own assigned admission counselor. You can definitely go to the admission website to take a look at who your assigned admission counselor is. And I encourage you to do so you can get connected with them as soon as possible, because they are going to be your new BFFs at PLU to help you through the college process as well. Some little bit things about me so you can get to know who I am. I love Ben and Jerry's Cherry Garcia. That's my favorite ice cream. In college, more than 14 years ago, I randomly won a chicken wing eating contest. Never has been able to accomplish that feat again. And I have not really drank coffee since 2008, although I've eaten many coffee flavored items. So drinking, eating, I think there's a difference. I enjoy coffee flavored things, but I don't necessarily drink coffee. All right. So again, this is just a quick introduction of myself. And as I mentioned before, all of you here today joining us in the webinar, you have your own assigned PLU admission counselor. So I encourage you to go to the PLU website so you can learn more about who they are. And that way you can get connected with them as well. All right, so now you've joined in us for this session. We're really going to be talking about what the purpose of the college admission essay is in the whole grand scheme of things. So we're going to give you some understanding of what makes a strong college admission essay to help you understand and get ready. Some schools have applications due in the next few weeks. Some of them are going to be a bit later, but we just want to give you some tips and tricks on how to get ready. Now, in the world of college admissions, what is the purpose of the college essay? Well, it helps us understand a little bit more about who you are as an individual. We get many pieces of application that tell us bits and pieces of who you are. We get a letter of recommendation from a faculty or a coach or a community member. We get your transcripts, so we see the grades that you've had, the type of classes you've taken. Some of you may even consider sending in a test scores like the SAT or ACT. Some of you, especially for those maybe thinking about art schools, maybe you've submitted an art portfolio. All those things are really great to see who you are, but it doesn't really give us a complete picture. The college essay is really designed to help us get a well-rounded picture because it helps us understand how you articulate your thoughts. It's gives you the ability to express yourselves in writing that can't necessarily be shown in other parts of the application process. It also gives us opportunities to understand what drives you, what motivates you. It helps us understand why you're applying to college and why you think maybe you deserve a spot at the institution you're applying to. So again, it just heightens more awareness of helping us to know who you are, and giving you the ability to to show us how well you critically think on a question that's being asked of you. And again, just putting more of a voice to your application than more so than other parts of the application can do. So again, you're adding more personality to the application by completing the admission essay, and this is how we want to get to know you a little bit better. All right. So here's just a game plan of what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to go really quick at what makes the best applicant. So just some tips right there. And then we're going to focus in on who the audience is and who you should be writing to when you're writing your admission essay. Then we're going to go into a little bit more specifics on how to make a stronger essay. So things and how you can stand out a little bit more, because many colleges are reading thousands of applications. So we just want to make sure we're giving you an opportunity to understand what those are. Then we're going to go down and look at some essay writing tips that can help you make a strong essay. And then we're going to talk about some pitfalls that you hopefully will avoid as you're writing these essays. Those cliches that we want to make sure you're avoiding, and things that you can prepare. And then finally, things you need to do before you submit your application. Okay. So here's some quick tips on how to be the best applicant. We want you to do your research on when applications are due for the institutions you're applying to. We want you to make sure that you're planning ahead, because that's going to give you more opportunity to make sure you're understanding what next steps will be. So we encourage you to look and research about what the application dates are. Means we also encourage you to apply early. Resist the temptation to procrastinate and applying the day before, the night before. We want you to give that opportunity to learn more about the institution and the application requirements. So apply early and learn those processes. We encourage you to visit campus. If you can visit a campus in your area, we encourage you to do that, especially if you're looking at the colleges that you're wanting to do. Make sure you go there. You're also doing a big step by actually joining us today. You're attending a presentation. We also want you to be prepared for your application. So making sure that you're ready to explain some grades maybe that don't really reflect who you are. So making sure you understand how you're going to tell that to the admission officer as you're applying. We also want you to use all parts of your application as much as possible. There are places where you can help us bring context information that we can't necessarily see. Maybe tell us about a community disruption that affected your learning, or tell us about something that we should know that's not really easy seen on your transcripts. So tell us to know, help us to get us to know you a little bit better. And again, we want you to get to know you. So again, take the time to research your application deadlines and research the application requirements, because it'll make you feel more prepared and ready to go through the application process. And eventually it'll just show us, the admission officers and the admission committee, how hard you worked on the application and essay. Okay, so again, just apply early, visit campus if you can, be ready to explain, provide some context in your application, use optional sections if you can. This is all in order to help us to get to know you a bit better during the application process. So again, one of the things we're going to talk about is knowing who your audience is. So just put this in, just imagine this. So every admission office reviews files differently, but I want you to think about this. You all are going to be assigned to an admission officer or admission reader or whatever they're called. You're going to be assigned to someone. Many of these admission officers could theoretically be on the road recruiting. So they're visiting high schools, they're going to college fairs, they're out of town, they're trying to do a lot of outreach opportunities. And it also could be late in the afternoon on a Friday at 4:30 p.m. And these admission officers, they're going to have a million applications that they have to review. So just know that you're primarily writing for the admission office. So how are you going to stand out knowing that an admission officer may be a bit tired and it's 4:30 on a Friday and they have a ton of files they need to review? So thinking about that, how can you stand out to those that are reading your application for admission to the university? So we're going to talk about that next. Okay. Here's some really memorable things. Here are some, sorry, not to jump ahead, but here are some great ways for you to help you stand out a bit more. So we want you to be memorable, be bold, and tell us a story. Those are some easy recommendations to you to help you stand out. So in your college essays, it's okay to be creative. We encourage you to bring a story to life to help us understand who you are. So again, be creative. We encourage you to do that. However, we also encourage you to follow the rules of the essay. So if they're saying that your essay has to be within a certain word limit, make sure you're following that as much as possible. If you can, just making sure that you understand the requirements is going to be super important, because again, remember, your admission officers are reading the applications. They probably have thousands of other applications and you haven't gotten to the point in your essay yet. I don't know if they're going to continue on reading the application. So again, be creative. Make sure you're articulating your thoughts into words that can help us understand more about you. Another trick is also, what is something about you that no one would expect? What is something about you that we can't necessarily find in your application itself? So highlight that a little bit further. Bring us into your life a little bit to help us understand who you are. And again, you can also tell us what your main qualities are. You don't need to regurgitate your resume or anything like that, but something that your qualities that you want to highlight that tells us something about you that we can't necessarily tell from your application. So those are some things we want to make sure that you're able to do. So making sure that you're standing out, because we want to get to know you through the essay as much as possible. Okay. So we're going to go into some different samples for everyone to understand how this could work. So in writing a strong admission essay, we want you to be specific as much as possible. So we're going to start off on the left-hand side over here. We're going to read that. And then we're going to compare it to the one on the right side. So the one on the left side starts off as, I want to help people. I have gotten so much out of life through love and guidance of my family. I feel that many individuals have not been as fortunate. Therefore, I would like to expand the lives of others. Okay, so that's one part there. The next part is, my mom and dad stood on plenty of sidelines till their shoes filled with water or their fingers turned white, or somebody's golden retriever signed his name on their coats in the mud. That kind of commitment is what I'd like to bring. Sorry, that's what I would like to bring in working as a teacher. So things like that, we want to make sure you understand. So sorry, my screen kind of got blocked out there, so I couldn't see the fourth grader. Sorry, working with fourth graders. With that, as you can see the left-hand side, you couldn't get a sense of what they were talking about. We knew that they had support from their family and they wanted to expand the lives of others, but we couldn't get a sense of what does that mean. Did you want to be an educator? Did you want to work in social work? How did you want to help on others? However, the one on the right actually went full on, provided some background information, but then it also went in and gave us more information about what they actually wanted to do. So we get a sense with the student on the right that they actually want to be an educator and work with fourth graders. So we encourage you to take a look at that and have opportunities to making sure that you're being specific to help us understand who you are and what you're trying to achieve. However, while getting specific, we also want you to get to the point of it, because remember, many colleges also have a word limit. So again, we're going to look at the left. So it says, over the years, it has been pointed out to me by my parents, friends, and teachers, and I have even noticed this about myself as well, that I am not the neatest person in the world versus I'm a messy person. You know, this is a fine balance of being concise and direct to the point. We don't want you to use filler words and frou-frou words just to make a word count, but it's also, we want you to make sure that you're getting your point across, but also making sure you're getting direct, because as I mentioned before, your admission officers could also potentially have many other applications they have to read. So we encourage you to be able to get to the point when you're answering, submitting your questions, or when you're answering the questions for your admission prompt. So again, while we want you to be specific, we want you to get to the point, but we also want to make sure we have enough information so we know. So that's the weird fine balance that we encourage you to work out and understand a little bit better as well. All right, next we're going to have some essay writing tips here as well too. So just know that it's okay to use the same essays for multiple colleges. However, if you're going to be using the same essay and you're naming a college in your essay, make sure you change anything college specific each time. We as institutions can tell if you haven't been paying attention. That tells us that you are just really rushing through the application process. So make sure that if you decide to name a university in your essay, but you're submitting it to a different university, or sorry, if you're using the same essay, but you're using college specific information, make sure you're changing anything college specific each time. So let's say, for example, you're doing the Common App for Seattle Pacific University, but you want to use the same essay for PLU, make sure you change Seattle Pacific into PLU. we can tell if those things are there. So making sure you're paying attention to those details. What I think is also important as well to making sure you have a successful essay is making sure you're answering the prompt. The Common App has several essays you can choose from. Make sure you're answering the prompt that you're asking, make sure you answer the prompt that you've been asked to review. Now, if you're selecting one of the essays that says, hey, submit an essay of your own description or answer your own essay prompt with your own essay, totally fine to do if you want to do that. However, we encourage you to put the question that you're answering on the top of your essay so you know what kind of question you're answering. Truth be told, sometimes we get students submitting an English essay and I don't know what you're trying to answer. They may have just ripped it off from a class that they took. So make sure you're putting the prompt of what you're trying to answer in the body of the essay, especially if you're not answering some of the general prompts from the Common App is recommended. So we encourage you to do that. Punctuation is going to be important. While this essay is not necessarily like a graded essay you would have in your English or literature classes, we do want to make sure that you're following normal grammar and English writing conventions as well too. So punctuation is going to be very important during during the essay process. So making sure you're proofreading. It's also okay to review it several times. Are there places in your essay where it's kind of repeating the same information multiple times? You can review it and take it out. Or are there places that you can remove something and add something? Again, we're looking for details that make you stand out. We're looking for details that make you you. So if you need to rewrite it and take things out or add things out, you can definitely do that. You shouldn't be afraid to rewrite it if necessary, because again, we want you to make sure you're putting your best foot forward as well. We also encourage others to read your application, to proofread it, because it helps them get an understanding. So have your parents, your godparents, your brother, your sister, your godbrother, your godsister, your auntie, your uncle, your teacher, your counselor, have anybody read it just so they can help and provide feedback for you as you're going through the essay writing process. Finally, another tip we encourage you to do is also research. Yes, you can do research. That's definitely a possibility you can do. Sorry, I jumped ahead there. You can definitely go, I'll show you some different resources that you can do to research to help you with that as a way to help you put the best foot forward. Be aware of some pitfalls in essays, because while essays help us get a better understanding of who you are, we also just want you to avoid things that just doesn't help us when you're during this process. Some things that we want you to avoid are things like the laundry list of accomplishments. The Common App already provides you a place where you can add in your involvement and some of your accomplishments. We don't need another listing of your resume of what you've done and why you're happy about it. Instead, tell us about a specific thing during one of your accomplishments that really stood out to you and what you learned from it. So we encourage you to think about that as much as possible. Tragedies that aren't really tragedies. Now, this is a weird fine line that folks will have to discern and work with your supports groups to help you figure this out. For me, I typically think of the students who are in sports, especially students who are actually cut for a team. It's not necessarily a tragedy. You know, it may be a setback, but it's not a tragedy. So that's something you're going to have to work and understand to see tragedies that are really tragedies. Things like how maybe perhaps COVID impacted your life. Maybe you lost a loved one, or you lost a loved one to some sort of accident. Things like that are really what we're getting at for tragedies, but things that are not necessarily in the grand scheme of things impacting your whole life, or necessarily to have an impact of one thing in your life, you may want to consider that. So again, I kind of equate that to those who are doing sports. Being cut from a team is not the end of the world. You have other opportunities for growing and developing. Another cliche you want to avoid and pitfall is the most important thing in my life is blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry I have to do this with my sports students. You want to avoid that as well too. We get that maybe soccer is an important part of your life. We get that football is an important part of your life. I don't need to have you tell me about the play that you did at your one of your games. I don't need to know about how you scored the winning shot or how you missed the winning shot. What we're really getting at is, what did you learn after those opportunities? I don't need to know the play-by-play action that you did. I need to know what you did and what you learned after, and things that you're hoping to learn and grow from those experiences. And then that also ties in with the mission trips. Mission trips are a great opportunity for students to get a different experience, but also giving back to the community and also helping others. Those are great too. But again, much like the sports things, don't need to reiterate what you did on the mission trips. We get the general sense of it. Tell us what you learned from it and what you saw differently after doing the mission trip. So spend like 2 or 3 sentences of what you did, but spend the most of your essay of what you learned and what you're hoping to get out of that experience. Okay. And again, you just want to avoid bad quotes. When I say bad quotes, it means that you were just quoting the wrong person. That you're not quoting an author correctly or things like that. So just make sure you're avoiding the bad quotes. What it really does, it all boils down. If it doesn't help us understand who you are, then don't write about it. Again, we want to learn more about you. So tell us about you. So if it doesn't tell us about who you are, then don't write about it. We want to know more about you as much as possible. The essay allows you to be more than just test scores or a GPA recommendation. It allows you to express yourself in a way that the application as a whole can't tell us. So we want you to spend more time on your essay. So we encourage you to relax and have fun with the essay and help us understand who you are as an individual. Here's some opportunities to take a look at. We encourage you to look at these websites here. You can go to essayhell.com. That's a great place. Or the college essay guys. These are great examples of some institutions that show that have been really important for their college admission process. So again, you can go to essayhell.com or Google Places. Some universities actually post on their essays that they really like. So like Johns Hopkins University, they've done that before. So again, do some research and take a look at some great examples of essays that universities have really liked for their admission process. You all, if you haven't already, you can start the application process. And in many cases, you can actually take a look at what the essay sample essay would require. So if you have an opportunity to do that, we encourage you to take a look at the essays prompts you're ready for that one. That means also you need to know your application deadlines as you're applying, so that way you're not rushing. So just know that you have an opportunity to get through those opportunities to look and how to prepare yourself. And again, know your resources, especially in your school. You have high school counselors, college counselors that can help you navigate this process. So just know that you have those opportunities. So, and I've said this multiple times in the essay, before you submit, and I can't emphasize this enough, I'm kind of reading this verbatim, we encourage you to proofread your essay. We want you to put your best foot forward as much as possible. So have anyone and everyone proofread it. It's worth it. We want you to put your best foot forward. So, and proofreading is one of the best ways that you can do that. So again, thank you all for joining us here today. And again, I encourage everyone to use the Q&A sessions if you do have any questions to ask. That website on the screen is where you can find your new best friend, also known as your admission counselor, your assigned admission counselor at PLU. So we're going to go ahead and answer a question that's been put here. The question was, as of talking sports, I wanted to write about how the involvement in a sport helped me get used to life in America by giving me a place to belong as an immigrant. That's a great topic. So, that's a great start for that one. One of the things you want to think about is, what did you learn from this experience being an immigrant and finding your place in sports? What are some things that you learned about? What are some things that you learned about yourself that you didn't know you learned about? So that's a great question. That's a great path to follow if you're thinking about that question, or if you're thinking about using that as an example for your essay. So again, it's good to talk about how involvement, but again, don't resist the temptation to just to talk about what sport you did and how you played. Tell us about the learning experience that you had as well too. Are there any other questions that I can help answer? Here's another one. Do you believe that the essay is a good opportunity to explain grades during COVID, or will you already have assumed that is why it dipped? So to be honest, we as admission officers don't want to assume anything. We can't necessarily tell just by seeing your grades why they dipped. We don't want to assume anything. Things could have impacted your grades other than COVID. It could have been family life. It could have been mental health. It could have been a lot of other things. So we don't want to assume. Within the Common App, for example, there are sections that you can provide additional information. and more context of why you feel your grades don't reflect who you are. So again, there are additional sections in the application that you can add that contextual information that'll help us review it as well. So things like that, if the grades don't reflect who you are, use those open spaces in the application to help us get to know you a little bit better. And then we did have a question here. If you share if you're upbringing an immigrant from childhood impacts your personality today, that is not necessarily cliche, but you want to make it understanding of how many admission officers want to see how you're going to grow and how you're going to take those lessons that you learn from those experiences forward. We're forward thinking, we're future thinking. So if you could share with us how that's going to help you succeed and thrive in college, we want to learn more about that as well too. So provide some information of how you were able to navigate systems in your high school and how you're able to grow from that. It's really going to be important. So it's not too cliche. It's actually something that could work. But again, we want to see some forward thinking. How is that going to help you move forward in college? Are there any other questions anybody have that want to ask on the college essay? Going once, twice. All right. So I will be staying on for, when should I have my finishing? So you want to have it finished as hopefully before you submit your application. Because many applications, especially the Common App, can't have you submit an application without the essay. So make sure you try to submit it around the same time. It's kind of hard to play around with the format. It's kind of hard to play around with the format because some colleges can allow you to upload a PDF, or some will have you just copy and paste into a Word box or a text box. So you can't necessarily play around the format. You can play around the format if they're asking for you to upload a document or a PDF copy. So just make sure you're reading the instructions and seeing what opportunities you can get as well too. Yes, another question was how can you a specific story related to how it has impacted your personality. Those like life moments that impacted you, those are something we want to learn again. You can definitely write about, but again, it's not necessarily having to reiterate that specific story of what impacted you. Again, it's going to be the forward thinking of like, how is this going to impact you moving forward? What did you learn from that story? How will that help you moving forward? So again, it's a lot of forward thinking you want to think about. So we're getting to some questions that are getting really specific. Some of these questions you may want to be asking to some of them for the admission offices, to making sure they understand if that's within the limits. But also, again, it's walking that fine line of being creative. So I mean, you can be creative, but making sure one, you're answering the prompt. And again, one, you're telling the story is what we want to get about. So you can be creative as you want, but making sure you're answering the prompt and getting the point across and making sure we're getting to know you would be great as well too. And there's a question about being personal in your essay. That's something that you will need to talk about. You need to reflect on yourself and how personal you want to get. Maybe before you submit your application, you want to talk to your assigned admission counselor just to go over the details of making sure that we're putting the information clearly in the essay as well. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward as much as possible. Again, if you've been involved in something for a while and it's impacted you, feel free to write about that. But we don't need you to reiterate what you did in those programs. You don't need to know what you did during practice in the game. We don't need to know what you did in the theater program. We get a sense of your involvement, but how did it impact you? How was that impacting you as a person now? And what did you learn from those experiences that help you move forward, especially into college as well too? If anything, you're going to get across anything you're going to get across, we're going to get understanding that you're really passionate about something. And again, as I mentioned before in another section, we encourage you not to rehash your resume. We want you to talk about those experiences and those learning experiences that you've had in those experiences. All right, any other comments, questions, concerns, jokes, rumors? Again, use the Q&A if you have any questions. So I'll just be here for another couple of minutes if anyone has any other questions. So again, thank you all for joining us today. We thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about the essay process for the application. So if you have any other questions, feel free to stay online and we'll be able to answer some questions. So again, thank you all. Have a good rest of your week and have a good night. So here's a great question. Do colleges admire when you use strong vocabulary and descriptive words, or is it more more simple and straightforward essay better? Again, we want you to be descriptive and be specific, but we also want you to get to the point. So we're not expecting you to use a thesaurus to change every word to a grander word. We want you to be specific. We want you to get to the point, but we also want to have enough information to help us understand. So we're not looking for any verbose language, but context is key. And then we actually have what I like to call my producer, who's helping in the background. She wrote, "Write like what you are in high school. You don't have to write like a college student yet." And that's very true. Of course. You have a great rest of your night, Gina. Any other questions from the folks here as left online? Anything from Alana, Dawn, Carla, or Vincent? All right, so we're gonna end it in another minute or so. So make sure to ask your questions now, or you can reach out to your admission counselor on the website in front of you. All right. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you have a great rest of your night and we'll stay connected. So thanks for joining us. Good night now.